Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Michelle Morris with Consolidated Planning Group, and we have a fantastic discussion today about a new diagnosis. We've got Jennifer Lynn Swanson. She is a special education attorney, and she's going to be talking to us about, kind of what you need to consider when you have a new diagnosis. So, a little bit about Consolidated Planning Group first. And who are we? Why do we do what we do? Well, so first and foremost, we are a financial planning firm, but we specifically focus on helping families within the special needs planning community, within the special needs community. We are a holistic planning firm. We can handle anything that any traditional financial advisor would do for you, but we do it through that lens of understanding that your loved one might need you for the rest of their life. They might not be able to be fully um, independent and take care of themselves, and they might need care and money to pay for that care. So, what does that look like? We do this because everybody at Consolidated Planning Group, we have four financial advisors. All of us are parents of loved ones with disabilities. We bring our own experience to the table. We also have over 30 years of experience in investments, life insurance, securities. We are fully licensed in all of those areas. And we can certainly help you not only with those things, but with state and federal benefits, local resources, and like I said, planning for the future. We are members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. We are chartered special needs consultants and certified Social Security advisors. So sit back and relax today. Enjoy the webinar. We cannot hear or see you because we're in webinar mode. So if you have any questions, we certainly want to hear your questions. You can just put them into the chat box, and I'm going to keep an eye on that for Jennifer and ask those questions as we go along. The other thing I want to let you know is that we do record all of these webinars. We present live, and then we record them and put them on our YouTube channel. So if you have to step away or whatever, or you want to see this information again, you can go look at our YouTube channel. Since you have registered for today's webinar, or if you have registered for today's webinar, you're going to get an email that has a link to the recording plus all of the slides. So you will get that later on today. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, or you're listening on our podcast and you really wish you could have the slides, all you need to do is email us, contact@cpgcares.net, and we will get you those slides. And remember, it's .net, not .com. So families come to us at Consolidated Planning Group for things like lifetime care and protection plans, thinking about your loved one's needs and your family and what happens if something happens. We can help with transition planning, thinking about educational options, residential options. We do ABLE accounts. We can help you figure out that future cost of care, the state and federal benefits. And really, we are here to advocate for you and to educate you. Jennifer and I were talking about some of our activism, and this is one area where we both feel very strongly is that it's very important to get out there and help and say stuff. So when we advocate for you, we're contacting representatives and we're saying, we need to help. We need a shorter wait list in Texas for these waiver programs. We need larger limits so that people can actually live a life and still be able to get the benefits that they need. And it's pretty rare to find a financial planning firm that focuses on special needs planning. Out of the United States, in the whole United States, there are over 263,000 financial advisors, but fewer than 200 financial advising firms focus on special needs planning. That's less than 0.1%. So when you're with Consolidated Planning Group, I hope that you feel comfortable that we truly are experts in this area. We have done the research. We are giving sound, solid advice, and you can take our word because we've lived it and we breathe it day in and day out. So really quick, some advice before we go forward from us about what you should be thinking about doing for your loved ones. So first of all, you know, what's going to happen after high school? Think about that. Do you want your loved one to graduate from high school and then just be on the couch? Do you want them to have educational opportunities or a residential option or maybe day and transition programs? There's also great work programs out there. What does that future look like for you? And start touring those programs. Start finding out what's available. They might have waiting lists. They might just be behind because it may be a government run organization like Texas Workforce Commission. They do just sometimes get behind because they're waiting for funding and whatnot. Or like with summer camps or day programs or even residential communities. They might have wait lists too. So start checking out what's out there early, get involved, introduce your loved one to these opportunities and tour them and get on the waiting list. And then finally, one big piece of advice that we always want to say is just be really careful if you think that your loved one the sibling is going to take care of your loved one in the future. Maybe we've got little Jacob and his sister Sarah. Well, Sarah is neurotypical, and you think that someday she's going to have a job and a career and a family and all of those things, and she wants to help. She loves her little brother Jacob. She wants to be there for him and to help you as the parent. Promises that she makes right now as a young adult might become overburdening to her in the future. It might become an obligation that she bit off more than she could chew, and she might not be able or willing to take care of Jacob in the future. Think of it this way too, from Jacob's perspective. Here's your sister, your best friend. You've been partners in crime all of this time. And now all of a sudden your sister, your best friend wants to step into that role of caregiver. It might feel a little bit like she's trying to be mom or dad. You're not my mom. Could you imagine that argument happening and that frustration and the resentment that could grow from that as well? So it might seem like a very simple, easy answer, but it's not always the right answer for every family. So just be very careful about that. Okay. So one more thing about consolidated planning group that I forgot to mention that I do want to put out there is that we are located in the Houston, Texas area, but almost all of our appointments are virtual. And that's great. The benefit for you to having virtual appointments with us is that we're not going to share germs with your immunocompromised loved ones. You don't have to get a babysitter. You don't have to travel to our office when we have this huge ice storm that's supposed to be coming in a couple of days. We can still conduct business. We can still meet with you without those additional stressors on us. So, without any further ado, I am going to turn over everything over, even control of my screen, to Jennifer, and she's going to take over. And like I said, Jennifer, I'll let you know when there's questions in the chat.
Thank you, Michelle. Please
You are
do.
so welcome.
I appreciate it. I would encourage you guys to let's make this a tad bit less formal. Michelle's got her cup of coffee. Forgive me.
Mhm.
And let's just chat like parents who are trying to find a path forward. Okay. So I am Jennifer. I enjoy my middle name, so I use it. I don't have control. Isn't that
Click
what it's like
the
to be a parent?
screen.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, that, and I was kind of making an existential joke, but I'm not able to move it forward.
There you go.
Thank you. So here's me being an attorney. Disclaimer: this presentation is to share experiences, provide a starting point for you who are receiving a diagnosis for your child. Nothing is legal advice. That's not my goal today. I'm an attorney, but I'm not here to give legal advice. Nothing in the presentation is medical advice. I assure you, I don't play a doctor on the internet. And any reference to an organization or an affiliation is not an endorsement of that. It's an endorsement of that organization. You might hear me talk about my son's ABA facility. It's purely to highlight experiences and to have a meaningful, vulnerable, and genuine conversation about being the parent of a child with special needs. Okay. So let me qualify myself. I am more proud of this third title. I have been a special education teacher. I have been a special education attorney. I taught public school in Conroe ISD for 9 years before finishing my law degree. I've been a parent-side special education attorney for the past 8. And 4.5 years ago, I had my first of 2 children. And when my baby was 11 months old, I started to suspect and was correct that he has autism and a speech delay. So I have actually been to the yard table as teacher, attorney, mom, and that is mom is the hat that I'm wearing today. Okay, so let's kind of go through our checklist of what we're going to talk about. In this presentation, a couple times things have evolved for me. I'm starting to, look at this is kind of the road. Look at it. Is this the prescribed path? Absolutely not. There is nothing about this that is predictable. The disability acceptance. Some of you are going to be at different places in your diagnosis. When I first created this webinar, I was in the early stages and it was still raw. We're going to talk about early intervention, ECI, public school, and 18 plus. So we're basically moving on a timeline of adulthood, adult planning, and then special needs planning. Is this everything that you need to know? No, there's no way to predict all of that, but I think it gives us kind of a framework, an outline, and then you can add, your own manual to share with other parents as you go through this journey. So disability acceptance. Let's talk about that a little bit. So okay. There's no perfect response to a disability diagnosis. And I'm just going to share a little bit of my story real briefly. So like I told you, I taught special education. I was a severe and profound teacher. I did a little bit of time and resource and then went to go practice law, thought I was going to be a patent attorney, and then not worth your time, but another one of those serendipitous moments, realized that I love ARD meetings and I love special education, and ended up being a parent-side special education attorney. And I want to read something to you that I wish I'd remembered to put in the slide, but it's from the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And I quote it all the time because I think it's so powerful. And it's in the law, Congress states, disability is a natural part of the human experience and in no way diminishes the right of individuals to participate in or contribute to society. Improving educational results for children with disabilities is an essential element of our national policy ensuring equality of opportunity, full participation, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency for individuals with disabilities. And I love that. I think that is the closest thing Congress has ever gotten to writing poetry since we became a country, right? That's so very important. But that doesn't change how it feels to you. Okay. So my son was 11 months old when I started to think something wasn't right. Okay. I didn't have any other frame of reference. He was my first kiddo. We got into therapies. We finally got into a developmental pediatrician. And then the day he was diagnosed, he was about 17 months. And I had a really hard time with it. And I'm not telling you that because I think you should have a hard time with it. I have seen moms who hear the diagnosis and already have a checklist, and I am in awe of them. There is no right response, but whatever you feel is okay. And it's important not to be upset with yourself for your feelings. You need to let yourself explore that, because that's the foundation of how you move through this. Okay. I think we can move on, but to the next slide.
Got it.
Thank you. It's not moving for me. There it is. Okay. So I understand in the very real way. Parents used to come to my office and say, I feel like I have to live forever. And I get that. And you don't. You can't. It's not feasible, right? But I understand that feeling. Whatever you feel around the disability, around the diagnosis, around the fears, sit with them, embrace them, be okay with them. Don't be angry at yourself. Give yourself that space. Okay, on to the next. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And I will tell you, I should have put an asterisk on this because I know that this is not a straightforward statement because we are all in different places in our journey and we all have different levels of resources, right? So and this is a joke. Like this should be a joke between us when we say a straightforward diagnosis because that's a misnomer. There is no straightforward diagnosis. But I would say compared to say an unknown rare genetic disorder, in some ways autism can feel straightforward. It's not. But there's a prescribed path for me, right? I knew when I went to the doctor, they were going to say ABA, OT, and speech, right? So I at least was able to put my eggs in that basket while I figured out the rest. That's not everything. OT and speech are great and ABA is great, but it's not going to solve all the problems. There's going to be other things that come up. There are families who don't feel like ABA is appropriate for them. There's a whole lot there, right? There's nothing as straightforward, even if you have a prescribed path. But you are their advocate. You have taken on a role. You have been voluntold that you're going to be their advocate for the rest of their life, regardless of your path. Find ways to take care of yourself. And like I said, I know that that's some of you are sitting there going, you don't know my situation, and I don't. But I do know that there are people who don't have my situation, who don't have the resources that I have. And there are people who have more resources than me. But find if all you can do is take 5 minutes for yourself to be quiet and remind yourself that you're doing a good job, if that's the best you can do every day, then do that because you cannot pour from an empty cup. And taking care of yourself is taking care of your child. Okay. I'm going to leave it at that because it is a touchy subject. And I know, we don't have a ton of resources in this country or this state a lot of times for parents. So, anyway, find ways to take care of yourself. So, on to the next slide. Am I supposed to be able to move these? Oh, did I do that? I did that.
Yeah,
That was
you
me.
are. You are moving them.
That was me. Okay.
Okay.
Online, sorry about that. Online community is easy to access. Anonymous posting is a good way to kind of feel out what other parents might say to you without letting yourself be known. Just be aware, not everybody on the internet is what their profile picture says.
And not everybody has the same heart as you do. So,
Right. Right. Absolutely. I will give you an example. My son does not have his top four teeth, and that's a really painful thing for me. And it's a tangential to autism. Okay. A lot of kids with autism don't prune. So when we went from suckling to solid food, he was still putting it on the roof of his mouth and suckling it back. I would check his mouth and think he swallowed the food, but he didn't, and he was pocketing it on the roof of his mouth. So
mm,
I made a post asking for dentist, and I didn't give a whole lot of detail. The response I got was pretty vitriolic. Autism doesn't cause dental issues. Please tell me you're brushing his teeth. And so I didn't, I, that's not the space for me, but I do know there are folks who do find their community. So if finding your community online is the only thing that allows you to talk to other parents, stay connected. That's important too. Okay, early intervention. There is no substitute for early intervention. Do not wait. You have to figure out, you have to accept the diagnosis, you have to take your time with it, you have to grieve or whatever that looks like for you, but do not wait until you are emotionally ready to accept the diagnosis before you act. And my son had a word wall at 11 months because I was clearly in denial, but we also started speech therapy. We also started OT. I kept telling myself he's a COVID baby. This isn't what this is. I had my own form of denial, but we also took action, and I'm glad that we did. So he's been in speech since very, very early in OT, and then eventually we were able to get into think neurology and get ABA services. But there is no substitute for early intervention. We know developmentally the first 3 years are critical. Now, if you're hearing this and saying, oh, we didn't get diagnosed till he was 4, we didn't know, that's not a criticism of you. That's when you knew, that's when early intervention starts. Okay. If some kids don't get diagnosed until they're 12, that's when you knew, that's when early intervention starts. Okay. None of this is a criticism, but I know when my husband and I were talking about this, he has a different background than I do. And so he was like, he would tell me, you're scaring me. I don't think I can deal with this. And he wanted to wait and see. And we didn't do that. We had a very forward-thinking pediatrician who didn't let us wait and see. But that's what I would encourage you to be careful of is wait and see. Even if you're wrong, explore it, right? Even if you find out, no, completely normal, at least you So I would encourage you, don't do wait and see, and don't listen to anybody who tells you wait and see. Maybe they're right, but get a second opinion, okay? So let's talk about what is in place, what's available, services birth to 22, what is generally available to you through public services. ECI is early childhood intervention. Okay. It's birth to 3. That's really important. The services can start as early as birth to 3 if you, as soon as you know something is wrong. ECI services are going to look different than when you get into public school. There's a similarity to it. They have plans you meet, there are service providers, but it's more like coordinating services and bringing people from different agencies than whereas when you're like at public school, everyone is at the public school and the services are provided there. Okay. Then age 3 to 5, this is where you can start to look at enrollment in public school, early childhood special education, ECSE. The process there, I think that's a different slide. So then ages 6 to 18, special education starts at 3. Okay, it can start at 3. It's just under ECSE. Continue into 6 to 18. Having a disability, though, doesn't mean that you automatically need special education. That's important. You could participate in school with a Section 504 plan, or nothing at all. It really depends on need. It's not a guarantee. So special education is a two-pronged test. You have a disability, and by reason of that disability, you need specially designed instruction and related services. So if you have a disability, but you don't need specially designed instructions, maybe accommodations help you extra time on tests, preferential seating. Those are some examples of accommodations. Then your child might find themselves under a Section 504 plan. Okay, so that's 6 to 18. That's going to encompass kindergarten through graduation. And then for students for whom it's appropriate, there's the 18 plus program. And that's going to take you, it's 18 to 21. There's some nuance in the law where if your birthday hits a certain way, you might stay until you're 22. So that's why I said 22. And then 22 on is adulthood. So that's the basic timeline. So let's talk, I kind of went over ECI a little bit. It's gonna look at your kiddo's needs. It can be related services, it can be nursing. It depends a lot on what your kiddo needs, but you do have meetings that you attend to talk about those services. There are some evaluations that are conducted as a part of that process. So it looks similar to public school, but it's a little different. So let's talk about ECSE. ECSE, depending on their age, a lot of times if they're 3, you're looking at a half-day program, and then as they're 4 and 5, probably a full-day program. At 3 years old, it's unlikely, not impossible, but unlikely that there are going to be neurotypical peers on campus because of when pre-K actually starts, general education pre-K. But when they're 4 and 5, if there's a general education pre-K, there's going to be some more opportunities for interaction with neurotypical peers, some more opportunity potentially to get out of the special education classroom. And I think that's really important. Okay. ECSE goes 3 to 5. And again, 3 to 5, there's some nuance there when your birthday happens. If you're 5 on or before the September 1st, you may actually be you're eligible for kindergarten. So there's a little bit of nuance there, but generally speaking, 3 to 5. 504 in special education. I think I want to unpack this a little bit more about special education. Special education is not a place. It's a program. It's a series of services. It's a document that prescribes an individual education plan for your student, for your child. A lot of times there's some misunderstanding about that. People will say, well, I don't want my kid in special ed. I don't want them in special classes, or I don't think they need specialized classes. There are plenty of kids on campus who have IEPs and you wouldn't even know it. Right. And I don't think it's a good habit to try to look at someone and guess anything about them. That's not appropriate. But I mean, you might not know why they have that service. They could have test taking anxiety, and so they're getting accommodations and maybe some executive functioning training, right? Or maybe they have mental health challenges. And so, as long as medications are working and they have their support system, they're fine, but they need these XYZ accommodations, or they're getting specialized social skills instruction, right? It's a spectrum. And there's a lot that can be done with special education. Okay, there's power in a good IEP, and there's power in good folks who implement those IEPs. And then 18 plus. So 18 plus is in some ways an extension of high school, but it's not traditional high school. 18 plus is looking at additional skills an individual would need to live independently, get a job, and so on. It's not going to be more academically focused. If you're in the 18 plus program, you've completed your high school career. Another thing that's interesting about this is you might graduate. Let's say you graduate, everything's fine. You go out into the community and you realize I really do need XYZ skill. If you're appropriate for the program, you're not prevented from requesting an ARD meeting, coming back and asking, hey, I need job skills training, okay, up to a certain age. So that's important. It's important to understand that if you, the door doesn't close the second that you leave. If something else comes up and you need that, you can talk to the ARD committee and see if there's a service that would be appropriate. Again, it's going to be dependent on whether the individual is appropriate for the program. It's not for everybody. Okay. And then we have adulthood. I think this is the scariest part of the timeline.
I think it's the scariest part of the timeline for all of us.
For all of us, yeah. Whether your child is neurodivergent or neurotypical, I am a special education law firm, but I have done a little bit of estate planning, and sometimes I will put together what I call college docs. And it's not just like supported decision making, which we should probably talk about a little bit here, and guardianship. But if your adult child is 18 going to college, it's really good to talk to them about planning, estate planning at that point, because at 18, right, those rights transfer. And you want to be able to have mom and dad come and help you, even though you're an adult. Okay. So adulthood, these are some resources associated with the special education timeline we talked about. It's not exhaustive, but it's a starting place if you're just getting into it, to help you kind of understand the lingo. We've got the ECI handbook, ECSC, special education, and then the secondary transition page. So looking at transition, that's a really important part of special education. Kind of Michelle alluded to early in her talk about what happens after. Transition planning in Texas starts on or around age 14 in public schools. And what it's really looking at is, what are they going to do after high school? I think it's a really great opportunity in an ARD committee to start planning for that, because it's something outside of academics, outside of related services. What are their interests? What are their abilities? What resource do they have available to them? And so on. So definitely want to look at transition when you're a kiddo. I was an elementary school teacher, and I think transition starts the day that you know that the child has a disability. But as far as the law is concerned, you start planning for transition at 14. Okay, so adult planning, let's talk a little bit more about that. And this is transition planning. Public or private, you need to keep an eye on the future, right? So public school has transition, like we said, at approximately 18 in the ARD committee meetings. One thing that I haven't really talked about that we should just touch on is evaluations. Special education requires a good amount of evaluation, and actually a lot of what we do as parents of kids with disabilities is around evaluation. You're gonna go to a developmental pediatrician to get an evaluation, to get a diagnosis. You're going to come back every 3 years. If your kiddo has autism, you're going to do what we did this past January and come back every 3 years to get reauthorized, so the insurance will continue to pay for services. In special education, you need an evaluation before you can qualify for an IEP. And that evaluation can be done every year or no less than every 3. And I think depending on your situation, how often you should do it, it's going to be dependent on you, but you want to know, you can look at schoolwork and you can look at grades, but those standardized tests, you can lay them side by side and see, okay, we were here, now we're here, and kind of see the trend over years. Transition planning, there are evaluations associated with transition planning that you can request. Vocational evaluations, some are formal, some are informal. But if you're unsure about transition planning, talk to your ARD committee and ask them about what evaluations that their district can do. And there are private organizations that also do like transition evaluations and like workplace assessments, things like that can help. But take advantage of those evaluations if you don't really know, because it is hard. I have a 14-year-old who really loves building Legos and playing basketball. Like, how do I build a future on that? That's a hard question. And it's not one that, as an attorney, that I always have a good answer for. You need to dig deeper. Are they really, really good at math? Are they really good at organization? Do they prefer to be on their feet? Do they like movement? Do they like customer service? Like there's a lot of things you can ask about. And then once you kind of have an idea, then you can add transition goals. You can add more stuff to the IEP to really start tracking and thinking about. So transition, I think it doesn't get as much attention as I think it should. And that's not a criticism of anyone. It's something you as a parent can really start to dig into. Okay. So let's talk about guardianship supported decision making. And I told Michelle at the outset, sometimes I talk too fast and I am trying to remind myself to slow down.
You're doing great.
Thank you. So happy birthday. You're an adult. Is the first birthday more scary or the 18th birthday? I
Oh,
probably the 18th. So let's talk about that 18th birthday, okay? You have kind of three prescriptive birthday pathways. Good old-fashioned adulthood, where all of the rights transfer. You have adulthood with supported decision making, and then you have guardianship, total guardianship, partial guardianship, and then there's some nuance to guardianship. So, what does adulthood look like? It is the transfer of rights. It is every right that you had previous to 11:59, the day before their birthday, transfers to them at midnight. And that sounds dramatic, but I mean, we have to have deadlines, right? In public school, ARD committees are required. If you're from out of state in Texas, we call it an ARD committee. Everyone else calls it an IEP team meeting. So when I say ARD committee, I
we
mean
do a lot of things weird here in
we
Texas.
do.
We call
Um,
it guardianship, other states conservatorship, right?
Conservative, right, right, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we're the size of France, right? We had to distinguish ourselves in other ways. Being the size of France wasn't enough. Um, but they will give you a notice of transfer of rights. They have to alert you to that, and that can change some things, especially if you have a child who's still in public school or still in school when they turn 18. They haven't graduated yet, or they're going to continue in the 18 plus program. That birthday is going to have implications. Okay. Then we have adulthood and supported decision making. So this is still the transfer of rights, but a proactive step on your part and the part of your adult child with a disability to execute a supported decision making agreement along with other planning documents. And those documents are going to depend on your needs. But I put that here because I want folks to know that supported decision making in and of itself is probably not sufficient. Um, you might need releases, you might need powers of attorney, but it's going to be specific to your situation. And then our third prescriptive path is going to be guardianship, and that requires going to probate court. It's going to strip your adult child of the rights of their person and or their estate in accordance with their level of incapacity, and then award those rights back to the guardian or co-guardians. Okay. It is a lawsuit. You're suing the adult for their rights. It sounds terrible, but for the persons for whom guardianship is appropriate, it is a good thing. And we're glad that it exists. Um, but those are the three prescriptive paths. Why don't we go back here for a second and unpack a little bit more about supported decision making? Because I think
Yeah, people often ask, does that hold any weight, or is it just kind of a gentleman's agreement? I mean, tell us more about that, please.
yeah, no, that's a great question. And that's kind of the that's I don't want to say the problem, but that's the reality, right? There's pros and cons. So the supported
Mhm.
decision making agreement um, is executed between the supporter and the person with a disability. And in the form, you can go through and write, I want help with this. I don't want help with this. So it's customizable. And the form is available online. You can Google supported decision making. And I encourage you to do it. I encourage you to get a copy and start having that conversation with your with your child as they're a teenager, to start letting them know that adulthood's coming, because you can have those conversations in real time before you hit that deadline. Um, but basically, the supported decision-making agreement does not confer any rights to the parent. You cannot use it to force a decision. You cannot use it to make a decision for your adult child. What it does is it protects the professionals who rely upon it. That's where its power lies, and that's why it creates ideally an environment where we can keep people with disabilities as independent as possible. Because the issue is if a practitioner relies upon it and it turns out that that person didn't execute it voluntarily, well, then in the future they're not going to be willing to accept a supported decision making for someone who did. So it protects them from liability. So it's indirectly creating a more inclusive environment and allowing that individual to stay as independent as possible. But that's why I'm saying you might want to pair it with powers of attorney. You might want to pair it with releases like for FERPA, which is the Family Education Rights and Privacies Act, which would govern educational records, or HIPAA, which would govern medical records, right? So you want to pair it with the things that you need because this would be a scenario. Young adult is very a great employee, did travel training, can take the bus to work, can come home from work, clocks in on time, takes the appropriate breaks, model employee, but they really have a hard time managing money. So you might help that they might say, help me manage my money. So you might need a power of attorney to help them handle their money, right? So that's an example. Let's talk a little bit about how supported decision making and guardianship dovetail, okay? Because when I go to file a guardianship application, to file a suit to ask the court to remove someone's rights and give them to my client, I have to tell the court that I considered least restrictive alternatives. And supported decision making, powers of attorney, special needs trusts, representative payee for government benefits, there's a non-exhaustive list of things that could potentially avoid a guardianship. Excuse me. And so I have to talk to my clients and we have to consider is what are the main issues? Are there problems we could solve without asking for a guardianship? And we have to present those to the court. And when we're giving testimony, which is called a prove up, we have to talk through that. Have we tried everything? Is this avoidable? So it's important, even if you think, I think my child might need a guardianship, if you can, attempt supported decision making anyway, or at least start having the conversations leading up to adulthood, so that you'll know, if
Yeah.
so that you'll know, and it helps you to go to the ARD committee and say, these are the issues I'm anticipating we're going to have in adulthood. Let's create a transition plan around that, right? So with guardianship, let's talk a little bit about that. Guardianship, and there are a ton of really great guardianship webinars that CPG has put on, and they're on their YouTube. So this is just an overview. If you want to know specifics, some really good guardianship attorneys on their YouTube channel. But there's guardian of the person, guardian of the estate, and guardianship can be total or it can be partial. Okay. Typically, when we're looking at kiddos who are becoming adults and turning 18, most of the time they don't have estates, but they could. You might have a Gerber baby who's got accounts, and good for you.
Mhm.
But most of the time we're looking at guardianship of the person. Okay. And then we want to look at, is it total or is it partial? A lot of that information is going to come from the PCME, the physician's um, certificate of medical examination that your primary care or your MD is going to fill out and talk about capacity, right? So if you have someone who can my favorite example, talking about activism, is retaining the right to vote. Typically, when you get
Mhm.
a guardianship, that person will lose the right to vote. But you can put on testimony, or the attorney ad litem can say, we believe that this person has the capacity to continue to vote, and allow them to keep that right. So that would be considered a partial guardianship because they're retaining the right to vote. Okay. People, what kind of vote rights do they typically lose? They typically lose the right to marry, the right to determine their domicile, which is their home, the right to make medical decisions for themselves, the right to drive, the right to own a firearm, the right to enlist. So there's a lot of rights that I think we, just kind of accept as our rights, that you don't think about losing them until you start to look at the guardianship process. But anyway, in a nutshell, that's guardianship. So yeah. So let's talk about special needs planning, which is last but not at all the least. If anything, it's as daunting, if not more daunting, than adulthood. I was on I had the privilege to be on a panel, a parent panel for um, a special needs school that's going to add residential facilities soon. And it was maybe, I'll just be candid with you. I had to turn my camera off because my son is 4 and I hadn't even thought about what if he's not independent, right? That I know it's in the
Mhm.
back of my mind, but oh, I've got time. We're doing all these things. And I think it was a good experience for me to kind of start thinking long term. But when I listened to them talk about this amazing facility, and I thought, man, if Connor lived here, I think I would feel okay. This sounds great. And then I was like, wait, what is this going to cost? And that's where
Mhm.
it got
Like,
scary because
oh.
yeah, like it's not that I can't die. I need to acquire a multi-million-dollar corporation to fund this. It's
Mhm.
expensive. And so, and that's another reason why don't wait until you're emotionally ready to take action. We know money, the growth of money, you need a sum and time. Money grows over time. So start early in this planning. So this is again non-exhaustive and consolidated planning. They gave you their introduction, Special needs trusts are a financial planning tool. There are tons and tons and tons of trusts, but I'm going to focus on two types of special needs trusts. There's third party and first party. And that designation is just telling you where the funds came from. So the trust will have a beneficiary. If it's a first party trust, then the assets belonged to the beneficiary and now they're going into the trust. So it's a first party trust. If the beneficiary never owned the assets, never owned any of it, then it's a third party because the money came from a third party. Okay. Um, it's typically advisable if you're doing a special needs trust to try to get a third party because it doesn't have a payback provision. And again, there's so much nuance to this, but sometimes that's not possible. Like Congress said, disability is a natural part of life. Disability is one of the only protected classes that affects us all. You can't change a lot of things about, you can, you can't change your race. You can't change your background. But disability doesn't care who you are, where you come from, and what you believe. The reality is, disability will affect all of us at some point in our life, more than likely, even if it's disability related to old age. So my point with saying that is you might be a healthy individual who finds yourself in a car accident that leaves you disabled. And as a result of that, you maybe get a sum of money, a settlement. Well, that settlement is first party is your money, right? So you would have to use a first party trust. So third party confers some benefits, but if a first party is what's appropriate, like great, use the trust to to protect yourself and your assets. Able accounts are another option. And they are incredibly nuanced. They are different from state to state. And I would imagine consolidated planning has some good knowledge about that. But
Oh
it's an
yes, we can sign you up and get your Able account going and do that for you. We don't charge anything to do it, but the one that we use does have a $250 minimum opening
okay.
amount. But we can talk to people about that and explain it all.
That's great. And it confers some benefits. We talk about like different, like, whenever you talk about anything tax related, you always say a number like a 501(c)(3) or a 529 or whatever. Those are specifically the number, the code from the code, right? It's section 529, right? But it
Mhm.
confers benefits to you. It allows you and sometimes to not pay taxes on certain things. Like if you think about like the child care savings account, I can put money aside to pay for child care and I don't pay taxes on the money I put aside. So the ABLE account confers some potential benefits, and I think it's worth considering. Government benefits is another area, and I will candidly tell you on this call, I am not the right person. There's consolidated planning that has their certification, and then there are if you find yourself in a situation where your benefits have been denied or something along that line, there are attorneys who handle specifically SSI denials and things like that, and plenty of them in the Houston area and abroad. But that's something that you want to look at when you're doing special needs planning because it all interconnects, right? You set up your special needs trust to protect your benefits, but you need to know what you can spend the money on and what you can't, and how that might affect your benefits, right? Letters of intent I don't know if this is a fair confession, but before I had my son, I'm not sure that I understood the importance of letters of intent. But let's talk about
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
They're not the most important document, but it's a very close second. The letters of intent allow you to convey your love for your child in a way that is what am I trying to say? Concise,
A
organized.
love
What are
letter for your family.
Right. What are your values? What do they love? What was their favorite thing? I want to make sure that they get to visit the Grand Canyon every year when I'm gone because that was an important family event, right? And assuming that there's money for that trip. But do you know what I mean? Like, it's really important to me that yada yada, or this is what I loved about them, and I want to make sure that they're able to continue this hobby forever. You know what I mean? And those are minor things that don't seem like they would matter, but they do, right? If I'm gone, if something happens to me today and someone else has to raise my son, I want them to know what I know about him, right? And so that letter of intent, you're going to want to update that periodically because we change, you know. It doesn't have to be every year, but I 2 to 3 years. I mean, kids change so much, you
Yeah,
know.
it should be a living document, something that you're going to look at, once a year maybe. And as your family grows and evolves and your loved one grows and evolves, you change up the letter of intent. I think of it like, you know, um, you leave a note for the babysitter of
Mhm.
what the bedtime is and what the nearest neighbor's phone number is and stuff like that. This is like an extended, much, much more intense version of that.
Yeah, yeah. And it doesn't cure the feelings associated with I need to live forever, but it
Hmm.
definitely helps to lighten a little bit of that load, I think. And there are, like I said, and so much more. There are a ton of different other financial planning options or tools. It's going to depend on your family. I know a lot of in my previous firm, when I did special needs planning, a lot of people would say, we don't have a lot of money. How do we fund this? And so one of the most
Hmm.
common tools is life insurance. That's not going to work for everybody, but it's an option and it gives you a way to ensure money will be left if something happens to you, right? And that's one option. But also, I mean, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago or today. Getting started is a good idea. It opens the door. And then you know, taking
Well,
action.
yeah, it gives you a longer runway. If you
Mhm.
start now, you can make small incremental changes that are going to have a larger impact. Whereas if you just procrastinate or you keep hiding from going through the work, and it is work, there's a lot to be done. If you hide from it and you wake up and you're 70 years old and your loved one is in their 40s and you haven't done anything, it becomes, you can't just take your time and really focus on making the right decisions. It's got to go fast. And nobody wants that. You want to do the planning when it's easy. You can take your time. Well, it's never going to be easy, but it's not an emergency. That's what
Right.
we want.
Yes, and I think that's powerful. Any opportunity to take the emergency out of being a special needs parent sounds like a good time to me.
Yes.
Okay, so this I did slow down quite a bit, but I'm toward the end. I always want to invite conversation. You're welcome to email me. My business card is a calm strip because I was a former sped teacher, so I like the tactile nature of it. But if you happen to be a school person on this meeting and you want a calm strip, but you don't want one with the logo on it, I'll send you one that doesn't have the law firm logo on it. The point is more feedback. What do you think special need parents need that's not in this that's not here? Um,
Mhm.
you know, I yeah. So anyway, the next slide has my contact information on it. I would love an email if you think there's something I could do better or a question I can answer. I'm happy to send you a calm strip. So, Michelle, do we have questions or thoughts?
We don't have any questions yet. I do have a few slides to go over, so this is the perfect opportunity for
Great.
you participants to get some questions into the chat box if you want to ask Jennifer anything while you've got us. You might as well take advantage of this time. to get whatever questions you have answered. Now, one question I do have for you, Jennifer, is, do you do a consultation? How do people work with you, and what, I know that we never want to be salesy in these webinars. These are more for educational purposes, but this is your chance. What do we need to know about working with you?
Yeah, I don't offer paid consultations. I don't think it's a good use of parent resources, at least in this area, at least from my perspective. I do no cost connection calls. Call the law firm and I'll have a chat with you 10 or 15 minutes. If I'm a good fit, that's great. If not, I'll give you the list of my colleagues and you can find the good fit. We're about getting kids on the right track. So if I'm not a good fit, that's okay. But I call, reach out. That's pretty much it. For the most part, I answer the phone. Occasionally it's my paralegal, but
Okay.
if
Okay,
I couldn't do the joy
perfect.
of the practice, I'd go back into the classroom. So
Perfect. Okay. Well, your information has been fantastic. So, like I said, put your questions in the chat box. We will get those answered before the Zoom ends. But we at Consolidated Planning Group, I don't know if this is the first time you've been to one of our webinars or the 50th, but we do these 2 or 3 times a week. We're always trying to present helpful topics for the families that we serve. And we can help you with all of these types of things: future care cost estimate, the waiver programs, SSI, SSDI, Medicaid, Medicare, ABLE accounts, and how all of that works. All of those special needs planning things that Jennifer was talking about, like the trust, the ABLE account, you know, um, all of that stuff we can help you with. We can even help you think through, you know, what's going to happen. How do I fund that special needs trust? Life insurance is a great way, your investments, all of that kind of stuff. And how do you set up beneficiaries? We can help with all of those things. Now, when you get these slides later on, this link is clickable. It will take you to our website where we have listed out all of our upcoming webinars, usually for the next month or so. And you can pre-register. And that helps you get instant confirmation. You'll have that webinar link. You'll be ready to go. It will send you a reminder so that you don't forget to hop on. And even if you do forget, after the webinar is presented, it will send you the slides and the link to the recording. So you'll have all of that. And you'll have the ability, when you pre-register, to ask questions ahead of time. And we did have a couple of questions come in ahead of this webinar. Let me just check and see what those were. 3 questions came in. Are there any special accommodations that can be requested from a non-custodial parent, Jennifer?
that's a pretty nuanced question. So let's just add a little bit of parameters. This hypothetically a non-custodial parent is going to an IEPT meeting or an ARD committee meeting and is there because they're able to be there and allowed to be there.
Mhm.
You can make suggestions at that ARD committee meeting. You can say, I think this accommodation would be appropriate, subject to your relationship to the student, or like you're saying custodial, so I'm assuming there might be a family law matter pending or so on. You can ask for that. What the ARD committee has to do is consider parents' input. They don't have to take it, but they have to consider it. So I think the answer there would be probably subject to some nuance. But
Mhm.
just making a suggestion or saying this accommodation makes sense or I do this at home, I think a lot of ARD committees are going to be willing to at least hear you out. I mean, they're collaborative committee meetings, so potentially yes.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. Now, we asked about consultations. We at Consolidated Planning Group offer a free initial consultation. These are usually about half an hour. And we ask you to fill out a short form before the consultation. It's over Zoom. And you fill out a short form, give us a little bit of information about yourself and your family and your loved one. We ask a little bit about what you already have in place. And that gives us areas where we can give you some advice, about what you should sign up for and what steps you should take right away. And then we kind of go through any questions that you have for us. And then we go into what we can do for your family. And together, we'll decide if it's a good idea for us to move forward with a plan for your family. We'll go through all the pricing and how the process works and all of that during this free consultation. So, everybody here today, you will probably be getting a call from my team. The easiest way to make sure you don't get bothered, just make your own appointment. I promise we don't bite. We are truly here to help answer your questions first and foremost, and then talk to you about how we work. This is the entire team at Consolidated Planning Group. We have four financial advisors. It's two sets of husband and wife. We are all parents. We've all been doing this for a long time. And we've got five staff members who help with all of the phone calls and um, keeping us on track. They're kind of our handlers, if you will, making sure we are where we're supposed to be and everything is getting done. So look at all these smiling faces and think about that when we do call to reach out and see if you want our help. Please don't be rude. A simple no thank you works wonders. You can use the QR code to schedule that meeting. You can call or email us at our office, or you can call or email me directly. I'm putting my info in the chat box again, just for that. So, another question that came in before today's webinar: how do I get permanent guardianship for my child when he turns 18? And how does he qualify for disability after being denied? For that, Victoria, I would suggest that you do schedule a consultation with us because we can walk you through those answers. It's a little bit nuanced and a lot to get into at this moment, but getting permanent guardianship. Jennifer, do you help do guardianship?
I do. I handle, yes, I do. You can file, if it's appropriate, you can file guardianship up to 6 months prior to their 18th birthday. I don't know, a lot of people
Mhm.
don't know that. And then the judge typically signs the order on their 18th, on or around their 18th birthday. I do guardianships. There's a lot of attorneys in the area, in the Houston area who do them as well. So you have a lot of options to call around and find someone who's a good fit. But you can theoretically do the guardianship on your own, but it is still a legal proceeding. So
Mhm.
I would absolutely encourage you to shop law firms to see who's a good fit for your
Mhm.
family.
Right, right. And like you were saying before, we do all of these webinars. Sometimes we have different attorneys. You can
Mhm.
look back at some of our previous webinars and see, who do you get a good vibe from? Who kind of meshes with you and talk to that law firm. And then find out, of course, about location and pricing and who do you want to work with. Now, in terms of qualifying for disability after you've been denied, like I said, there are the criteria. And what I would want to ask you is, do you fit all three criteria points and what might have gone awry? And how do you reapply for those benefits once you correct whatever issues you might be having? I can help walk you through that. Now, where have I failed to set up Social Security or savings plan and trying to play catch up? Okay, Carrie. Yeah, if you are interested in like I said, looking at what do you have set up already? What do you still need to do? What have you missed out on? Or maybe you just didn't even know. That's where we can help. And that's where we can put together a full plan for you or have a quick chat and I can answer some quick questions for you. That's no problem. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat box. Jennifer, you have been so helpful today. Thank you so much for being here with us. And thank you to all the participants for watching. Again, if there's anything that you need, I hope that we'll hear from you soon. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a great day. Stay warm this weekend. Bye bye.